my name is Lucy. Welcome to my channel. I share videos on the topic of long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, and mind-body approaches that can be helpful with those conditions. So today's video is looking at a few different ways that we can manage emotions. And I'm not a medical professional, so this isn't medical or mental health advice. I'm just sharing things that I've found helpful myself. If this is the first video you've watched, just to give you a little bit of context, the approach that I have found most helpful with managing chronic fatigue and other chronic symptoms is becoming aware of emotions that I was previously unaware of and learning to process them better, be with those emotions better, and that ultimately helped me a lot with my physical symptoms. So someone asked recently in the Facebook group, what happens once you've noticed an emotion? What do you do about it? So I wanted to make a video to go into a bit more detail in this, because I think one of the things that is really common is that once people experience an emotion, their automatic response and what they're used to doing is wanting to get rid of it or wanting to fix it. And that's really natural because maybe having an emotion is uncomfortable, but often that doesn't actually work or help. So I wanted to share a few different ways that we can help be with emotions, manage emotions, process emotions. And this is a very wide topic, so I'm just sharing 4 different ideas, but there's probably many other things out there as well. And if any of these things are not suited to you, you don't think they're going to help you, then by all means look out for other things that are out there, or seek some help from a therapist or someone who's familiar with mind-body work and can give you different ideas around processing emotions. This is not a sort of a one-size-fits-all, and for some people emotions can be quite overwhelming, so only do what you feel is right for you. So there's 4 things that I wanted to mention in this video. The first is parts work, and I've talked about this quite a lot in other videos, but I'll go into a little bit more detail around kind of noticing an emotion and what type of questions you can ask parts. This is based on internal family systems, which is the idea that we have different parts of ourselves. So we might have a part that's a people pleaser, a part that's an achiever, a part that is a worrier, a part that is a perfectionist wanting to get things right all of the time. And so with these different parts can have different emotions. So a part can have many different emotions, and that's just one part. So I have found this approach really helpful myself. So I'll go into a little bit of detail around that. But also I'm aware that for some people, talking about parts is not as easy for them or not as helpful. I suppose in saying that as well, it's definitely worth giving it a try for a while, because it doesn't happen overnight that it's necessarily going to help you really quickly either. And that goes for all of these approaches really, because none of this is a quick fix. It's something you need to work on and be patient with yourself. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is somatic tracking. And somatic tracking is a technique where we pay a bit more attention to our body and how we feel within our body, whether that's to do with symptoms or emotions. The third thing I wanted to talk about is RAIN. So this is an acronym by Tara Brach, and it stands for realize or recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. So again, I'll just explain that in a little bit more detail, but this is another really good way of using a guideline or a map around what to do when you notice an emotion and you're not sure how to manage it or how to experience that. Then the fourth thing I want to talk about is journaling or speaking aloud for a period of time. And when I say a period of time, I mean like setting a period of time, putting on a timer for a period where you are allowing yourself to express that feeling, that emotion, and the thoughts that go along with that. So again, I'll cover that in a little bit more detail when we get to it. But I think one of the things all of these approaches have in common is a self-compassionate stance, and also an allowing and an acceptance. So again, coming back to what I said a few minutes ago, it's not about fixing or changing how we feel. Hopefully with time, those emotions will change. Nothing is ever static, and often emotions do change, as you'll be aware yourself. So I just think it's really important to keep reminding ourselves that we're not trying to get rid of, or we're not trying to fix, we're not trying to ignore or push these emotions to one side, because that's often what people are used to doing, and that's not something that is going to help you experience the emotion fully and understand why you're feeling that way. So another thing just to mention briefly is that sometimes these emotions will carry on. So if we're anxious about doing more, the anxiety might remain whilst you're doing more and after you're doing more. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. That is, I suppose, being out of your comfort zone, and sometimes changing your situation involves being out of your comfort zone. You don't want to be so far out of your comfort zone that it's really overwhelming and too difficult to manage and really overstimulating for your nervous system. But at the same time, often making progress does mean being out of your comfort zone. So when it comes to feeling anxious about changing your routine or doing more activity, that is very normal. And so I just wanted to mention that in case that's something that you're trying to change or fix. And it does improve with time. Okay, so firstly, in terms of parts work, if we notice an emotion is really overwhelming, it feels very present, we feel it really strongly in our body, and it's quite a difficult experience. One thing that can be helpful just to start off with is reminding yourself, this is one part of me that feels this emotion. There's potential that it could be more than one part. It might be 2 or 3 parts that feel that emotion. But it's not the whole of you that feels that emotion. There is likely also another part of you that feels grounded, safe and calm. And you might not be aware of that part, and that part might not have as much space because of this strong emotion and this other part. If you're feeling really emotional, chances are you're what we call blended with a part. So a part is sort of in the driver's seat, if you like. And sometimes even just noticing that this is one part of me that feels like this, and asking that part, could it give you a little bit more space so that you can be with it in a more helpful, compassionate way? It's surprising how something so simple like that can actually be really helpful. And you're not asking for more space because it's too overwhelming or because you don't want to feel that emotion. You're asking for more space so that you can help that part and be more empowered to be with that part in an accepting and grounded and compassionate way. So the next thing around parts work that can be helpful is getting to know why that part feels that way. You might already be aware, but if you're not aware, and even if you are aware, asking questions can help. So why does this part feel anxious? Why does this part feel frustrated or disappointed, or whatever the emotion might be? And asking, is there anything else that part is anxious about? Is that part scared of something that might happen? Is that part trying to protect any other parts of you? Another way to sense if you're in a self energy, which is that calm, compassionate, confident, connected state, is by asking yourself, how do I feel towards this part? And if you don't feel compassionate towards the part, if you feel frustrated, or like you want to fix it, or like you want to get rid of it, or any other thing towards that part, then you are blended with a different part. So again, you could ask that other part if it would be happy to just stand back so that you can have more compassion and more self energy within you at that time. Because this part's work with IFS, internal family systems, it doesn't work as well if we don't have self energy. So if a part is not noticing a sense of compassion and calmness, or clarity, or confidence, or connectedness, then there's a chance that it's not going to open up and is not really going to tell you what is behind the emotion. And the reason that we're asking these questions again is not to have a definite solution to this question, or oh, this is what I need to do. It's more giving that part that holds that emotion the space to express itself, to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. And it could help with considering what would help this part right now. Is there anything that this part needs? We have these thinking parts that are busy problem solving, analysing, organising, and those parts might jump into action and say, this is what we should do. But you really want to hear from that part. What does that part need from you? So some people might say this is like self-parenting, and I suppose it's a structure around how to self-parent. And it's a very good way, I think, of learning how to be with emotions where it feels safe and the part that carries that emotion can feel heard and understood. If you were doing IFS therapy, you might be going to the stage of figuring out, is this part protecting another part? And is that other part holding pain that needs to be released? And that is a different process where it can take time to even get to that stage, but that can be really helpful for some people in terms of allowing parts to change roles. So where a part is used to being an achiever or a perfectionist or a people pleaser, it's able to start changing its role and not feel the need to dominate as much because it doesn't need to protect those other parts as much. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, and you're interested in this topic, Richard Schwartz has a few good books. I'll put the name of a couple of books in the description below. I know it's an unusual thing to talk about, the idea of talking to yourself or acting as though you have multiple personalities, but I personally have found it very helpful, and I know other people who are very familiar with lots of different psychological approaches and have found this approach really, really useful. So the second one is somatic tracking. I suppose to mention, firstly, you can find videos online helping to guide you through a somatic tracking exercise. So if you go on YouTube and have a look for them, I'm sure lots of different ones will come up and you can try them out and see which ones you like. But essentially, it involves giving yourself some time, say 10 or 15 minutes. So for example, you've noticed an emotion, and what you want to do is really start to pay attention to the body. So where in your body are you feeling that emotion? What does it feel like? What is the texture of that experience? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have an image that you can associate with it? And just notice and just keep noticing. Are there any minute changes? Does it change very slightly? Does it move to a different part of your body? Does it come in the form of a symptom? Like, do you notice a feeling of pain anywhere in the body, or a feeling of a headache, or a feeling of tiredness, or brain fog? And just notice and sit with those feelings as they might move or as they might change. And the purpose is to just be there and notice. By bringing your attention into that feeling, you can even sort of see if you can intensify the feeling. If that feels comfortable or safe for you, you can intensify the feeling and just notice how it is to be with that. And sometimes throughout this practice, we do notice a lot of changes. So initially you might feel anxious. So for some people that could be a tightness in the chest. And as they sit with it, they notice maybe the feeling changes to a different kind of butterflies in their stomach feeling. It's just noticing how emotions might be moving in our body, and this can maybe help emotions move and change. And it's giving yourself space and time to allow emotions, to be with emotions, to accept and to witness what is going on right now. So that's something you could do on a daily basis, every day at a specific time. Just sit for 15 minutes or however long you want to do it for. It's very similar to many meditations, but rather than some meditations that are focusing on the breath or focusing on sound or focusing on something else, this is purely focusing on what is going on in the body and moving your attention. With anything that's more intense, you'll move your attention to that feeling. And you might also notice that you're yawning, or that there's some tears in your eyes, or you might notice a shift in how you feel or in your nervous system after doing this. You also might not, or you might some days and you might not other days. So it's coming to this practice with open-mindedness, where you're not expecting something really radically different to happen or to change, but it can also elicit changes and help you to process emotions when they come up. So the third thing I wanted to talk about is something called RAIN, and this stands for realize, allow, investigate, and nurture. This term was coined, or this sequence was put together by a woman called Tara Brach, who's a meditation teacher. And it's a really nice way of following a structure to be with emotions, or to be with different experiences that are coming up for you. So the first one, realize, is just the act of realizing I feel a certain way. Maybe I'm having specific thoughts because of that feeling. So realizing or recognizing what's going on right now and starting to pay attention inwardly rather than putting your focus outside of yourself. And often when we have emotions, our focus does go outside of ourselves. We start to think, oh, I need to research this because I'm feeling anxious. I need to research, or I start getting busy, or I start talking to other people about how I feel. So often our initial reaction is to focus on something outside of ourselves. So this is turning in. So the second step is allow. So allow the experience to just be there as it is, and notice what's going on. Just give yourself some time and some space for that feeling to be there. And again, this might involve focusing on the body, where it is in the body. Even if it's an uncomfortable feeling, practicing your capacity to be okay with it being there. Then the third step is investigate. So this is investigating with interest and care. So this is very similar to the parts work, where we're coming from a compassionate place when we want to learn more about why we feel a certain way, what part of us might feel a certain way. And you can do this in parts language, or you can just do it without parts language, I suppose, and ask yourself, what's going on for me right now? How does this show up? And you can ask yourself whatever questions you like, whatever you're curious about, and just try to understand it a little bit better and learn more about it, essentially. Learn more about why it's there, what it feels like, and if there's anything that could be helpful, or if it just is a case of needing space, needing time, needing presence. So the fourth step in this sequence is nurture. So this is nurturing with self-compassion. And again, it's very like the IFS model or parts work, where we're giving that self-compassionate energy to ourselves. With this step, if you're trying to reassure an anxious part and that anxious part doesn't feel reassured, then you might need to try something different. The purpose of giving yourself self-compassion is for that self-compassion to be helpful. And if it's not feeling helpful, chances are there needs to be some type of a tweak or change in what you're doing. Either the part of you that's feeling that doesn't like what you are trying to provide for it, or it doesn't feel fully understood, or having space and compassion might be uncomfortable for a specific part of us. So I suppose I'm trying not to overcomplicate this, because in this model, it's about nurturing with self-compassion. But I just wanted to mention that if that doesn't feel good, try something else, or try and change it, try and figure out what that part would prefer. If you imagine a friend is experiencing this emotion, take the example of feeling anxious because there's a big event coming up that involves being with people that are triggering to you, or make you feel anxious, make you feel concerned about what the conversations might be. If a friend was going through that, what would you say to that friend? Would you say, it's normal to feel like this? It's a difficult experience that's coming up. It's going to be difficult, but you can get through it. And, I'm here for you if you need to talk to me. That might be what, if I think of what my parts might want to hear in that situation, that might be what they want to hear. So think about how you would give compassion or understanding to a friend or someone else if this is something that doesn't come naturally to you. And the reason I keep talking about parts work again and again is because it's very useful in the sense that if we notice ourselves becoming self-critical rather than compassionate, we can notice that that's a part that's self-critical. So if that's a part that's coming in that's self-critical, we can notice that that part is trying to help us and give that part self-compassion and understanding that that part has a strategy that it's trying to help us with, which involves being self-critical. And those are quick ideas that might help with this process as well. As I said, the fourth part of Rain by Tara Brach is self-compassion. So being kind to yourself, being understanding towards that emotion, that feeling, that experience. If you want to know more about this, I'll put a link about Rain in the description, and there's lots of meditation videos on YouTube by Tara Brach going through this Rain process. So you can practice it, and you could do it on a daily basis. You could do it anytime emotions that are really strong have come up, if you find it helpful. So the fourth thing I wanted to go through, and again, just a reminder that this is something that you can try, and if it's not working for you, try something else. Or if you feel before you even start that it's not for you, then you don't have to try it. But I just want to say that because this one can involve embracing the intensity of an emotion and really going with it. And for some people, that's too much. For others, they feel safe and they feel comfortable doing that, and it can be really helpful. So this is allowing yourself time to journal or speak aloud about an emotion. And ideally what you want to do is put a timer on for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or maybe if your capacity is low, you need to put it on for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something that is manageable for you. And imagine that you are a child feeling this emotion or this experience, and what you want to do is just express in whatever way you want, without any boundaries, without any limitations, this feeling or this experience. So if you're writing, your writing doesn't need to be neat, your grammar doesn't need to be correct, you don't need to be using those thinking parts of your brain. You're trying to tap into the emotion. So, sometimes people will kind of scribble or write really messily, nearly as a way to just tap more into the parts that are feeling that strong emotion. And you're just embracing the feeling and allowing yourself to write whatever comes to mind. It doesn't matter if you're writing curse words or profanities, or you're writing about someone in a way that you would never say that thing to that person. You can always get rid of the sheet of paper afterwards, or if you don't want to write down, also speaking aloud and allowing, for instance, if you were anxious, allowing yourself to speak aloud all of the worries that you're having. Allow the feeling of anxiety to be there. So if that's in your chest, or if that's in your tension in your shoulders, or a twisting in your stomach, you're really embracing the feeling. You're allowing it to be there. And if it's increasing, that's okay, because this is your time to feel that emotion and have this experience. And once your timer goes off, you are going to go back to what you were doing before. If you notice, half an hour later you're feeling that emotion again, you could write something down as a note and say you're going to come back to this. And tomorrow, set yourself that time and give yourself that emotional experience. Of course, it might be helpful to use one of the other tools that I've just mentioned if you notice that emotion coming up, because as I've said before, it's not about trying to get rid of or push aside. The idea with this practice is that you are teaching yourself that you will have time on a regular basis to feel those emotions that are coming up for you. And rather than feeling stuck in them all day, every day, you are giving yourself permission and trusting yourself that you are going to be with those emotions and feel them. For some people, this can be really freeing, because during the day, outside of this time, they know they'll be coming back to another time where they can experience those emotions, and it's contained within that period of time. And that means that it doesn't feel like they're avoiding things or they're pushing things to one side. Some people also can find it helpful, like washing their face afterwards. it can help us just reset and start doing whatever we were doing beforehand again, knowing that we've moved on from that experience. And the idea with this is not to hold back. So it's to really allow those emotions to be there. If you're finding it hard to tap into the emotions, maybe walking around and really trying to tap into the energy in your body, noticing where that energy is, where that emotion might be, could also be another helpful way of doing this. There's lots of other journaling practices that people use. Journal speak is one of them, and I'll put a link in the description to something related to journal speak. I'm not sure what right now. So some of you will be aware already of Nicole Sachs and journal speak, and that's another way of journaling. In particular, it goes back to the past. It can also involve journaling about present experiences, but it's quite open. There's so many different ways to journal, and that's something that you can look into more if you think that would be helpful for you. As I said at the start, there's many different ways to manage emotions, to be with emotions, to feel emotions. For some people, it can be helpful to think about experiences they've had in the past and get some support with managing emotions around traumatic experiences or difficult experiences that you think might be affecting you now. Hopefully some of the things that I've mentioned today are different ideas for you to try around being with emotions and processing emotions or experiencing emotions. Just another reminder, this process is not going to be perfect. Every time you do one of these practices, it's not going to have the same outcome or experience as another time that you do it. So sometimes you might do one of these things and feel really good afterwards, feel as though it really helped you, and other days maybe that won't happen. So it's an evolving process. It's not going to be perfect. It might feel messy. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. I will put a link to the Facebook group in the description if you'd like to join and you're not already a member. If you've any questions or comments, feel free to put them below. If there's anything that you've used around managing emotions, processing emotions, being with emotions that you'd like to share, please share that below in case anyone else finds that helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.